Welcome. The identity of the knight is the greatest mystery in the story of Deltarune. It's greater than the mystery of who the man behind the tree is or who drove Jevil and Spantum insane. But what if I told you I can solve all three of these mysteries in one mega theory? What if I told you that a certain someone is behind all three of these mysteries? I think you'll find this theory very, very interesting. So I think this is going to be the first video in a series discussing different candidates for who the knight can be. Considering Deltarune Chapter 3, 4, and 5 definitely aren't coming out this year unless Toby Fox pulls a Scott Cawthon and releases them all in August or something, I have at least 6 months to squeeze these two games for all they're worth. Basically, in each video, I'll pick a particular character from Deltarune and find as much evidence as possible that they're the knight and come up with a theory. Doesn't that make your videos ripe for confirmation bias? This first video is going to be about the most popular candidate, our favorite non-character, W.D. Gaster. Now I admit, thinking Gaster as a knight is like thinking pizza is your favorite food or the Titanic is your favorite movie. It's a default setting for a human being at this point, but I can't deny that there is some evidence supporting that he's a knight. Now in most Gaster as a knight theories, they're pretty vague just because we don't know anything about Gaster. So in this video, I am going to be highly speculative. I'm going to take the details we know about Gaster for sure and stretch them for all they're worth. So if you feel I'm making some leaps in logic in this theory, this video is just going to be a fun crackpot theory. And without further ado, let's get into the video. But before we begin, I'd like to shout out No Chocolate from Tumblr for their posts on Gaster and Two Left Fun's video on Gaster. They've both been very useful in the research of this video, and I'll be stealing some of their conclusions. The links are in the description below. So let's talk about what we know about the Roaring Knight. The Roaring Knight is a mysterious character responsible for opening the classroom and computer lab dark fountains. According to Queen, only Lightners with a high amount of determination can open dark fountains, and according to Rouse, opening too many dark fountains can cause the Roaring. Based on this, the Roaring Knight is a highly determined Lightner who wants to cause the Roaring. According to Sham, the Roaring Knight is responsible for overthrowing the three kings and putting the Spade King in power. All the characters who have seen the Roaring Knight call it either by it or they pronouns. Here's why I think that this doesn't matter. We all know that the Roaring Knight is a mysterious character. It's quite possible that due to the way the knight speaks, the way the knight acts, and the way the knight looks, that it's impossible to determine what the knight's gender is or if it's even human, which means it's very possible that the knight is a Lightner who doesn't go by it, they pronouns in their everyday life. We gotta remember that the knight is trying to disguise its identity. They're not gonna tell everyone what their preferred pronouns are, and if someone misgenders a knight in front of them, they're not gonna correct them. So in my opinion, someone can't be exonerated from being the knight just because they don't go by it, they pronouns. Now let's talk about what we know about W.D. Gaster. Now I'd just like to say, if you're a huge Gaster lore head, you probably know most of this information, but just to understand this theory, I recommend you still stick around and listen to it. But if you really feel you don't need to listen to it, skip to this timestamp right here. Dr. W.D. Gaster is a character from Undertale who is only mentioned in passing by strange characters called Gaster followers. You can only encounter these followers if you generate a specific fun value at the beginning of your save file. According to these followers, Gaster was the former royal scientist responsible for making the core, a machine that provides electricity to the underground. However, his experiments went wrong and he fell into his creation, implied to be the core but not outright stated, and was shattered across time and space. In the wake of his disappearance, Alphys replaced him as royal scientist. If you look in the game's files for battle stats, you'll find unused stats for Gaster. His monster type identifier is 666, his HP is 66666, his attack is 66666, his defense is 66666, and he'll give you negative 6666 gold if you beat him and negative 6666 experience if you kill him. Another interesting, probably coincidental tidbit is that Gaster's name has 6 letters in it. It's clear Gaster is associated with the number 6. Every major character in Undertale has a unique way of speaking that corresponds to a unique typer value. Gaster's typer value is 66. If you generate the fun value 66, there's a 10% chance you'll enter a secret hallway with a gray door and waterfall. Entering the room, you will encounter this individual. His sprite is called Sprite_Mystery Man in the files, and he does this when you interact with him. It appears Gaster can teleport just like his followers. The sound effect that plays when this sprite disappears is called Sound_Mystery Go, and is the same sound effect that plays when Gaster's followers and Goner Clam Girl disappears. Something interesting Two Left Thumb pointed out is if you flip the sprite upside down, it still looks like someone with a face, just different. If you flip the number 6 upside down, it becomes a new number. If you have a fun value of 65 and walk into this area in Stolen, there's a 50% chance that you will enter the sound test room. Most of the songs in this room are irrelevant, but one that isn't is Gaster's theme. It goes like this. Interestingly, this song is 17 seconds long. Gaster's theme is called Muse_ST_him in the game files. After you begin playing it, you can't play any other songs. If you reverse and slow down sound_mystery go, you get Gaster's theme. It's likely that this sprite is Gaster. The WD in WD Gaster likely stands for Wingdings, meaning his full name is Wingdings Aster, which are both fonts. There's a precedent for characters being named after fonts, as Sans and Papyrus are both named after fonts. See my last video to know what I think on their connection with Gaster. In the True Labs, you can read entries written by Alphys detailing her experiments with determination. Each entry is labeled with a number, with one entry missing, entry 17. If you edit the room number on your save file to be 264 and open the game, this will happen. In the game files, this room is called object_Gaster_room, confirming that the author of entry 17 is Gaster and that he does speak in Wingdings. Here's a translation of his words. Entry 17. Dark, darker, yet darker. The darkness keeps growing, the shadows cutting deeper. Photon readings negative. This next experiment seems very, very interesting. What do you two think? The sound that plays in this room is called Muse_smile in the files. As you can see, Gaster speaks in all uppercase letters. Several of these letters of Wingdings are hands. One of the dialogue options the river person gives is, beware of the man who speaks in hands. He also says, beware of the man from another world. It's important to note that there are actually two entry 17s in the files. One is written by Alphys and one is written by Gaster. Since Alphys' entry 17 is likely the entry missing from the determination experiments, it means Gaster's entry 17 is from a completely different experiment. And considering that this experiment involves darkness, I believe it's likely he was experimenting on dark fountains. Finally, if you try to name the fallen human Gaster, the game will restart. That's all you need to know for Gaster in Undertale. Now let's look at what he's been up to in Deltarune. Although Deltarune was released in 2018, archives of Deltarune's website existed since 2016. From the years 2016 to 2018, this is what Deltarune's website looked like. If you click over here, you can download an image called him.png. It looks like a black box, but if you turn the exposure up, you get this. It's something written in Wingdings. You can also dehaze the image to make it look even clearer. Translating the Wingdings, you get 3 heroes appear to banish the angels' heaven. This references the Deltarune prophecy Ralsei tells Chris and Susie about when you first meet him. Now, why would Gaster know about the prophecy? The first thing you encounter in Deltarune Chapter 1 is the character select screen, where you create your vessel. This song plays. In the game files, this song is called audio_another hymn. It's interesting that Gaster's theme is called Hymn and this song is called Another Hymn, but the biggest piece of evidence connecting this song to Gaster is the melodic content. For a more rigorous musical comparison of these two songs, watch Andrew Cunningham's video on Gaster's theme. The link is in the description. But needless to say, Another Hymn contains Gaster's theme. Major characters in Deltarune also have unique typer values, and Gaster's typer value is, you guessed it, 666. If you try to name you or your vessel Gaster, the game will restart, just like in Undertale. At the end of the character creation sequence, the typer value of the narration changes to 2, implying the original narrator was interrupted by someone else. While in the dark world, if you try to use your phone, it won't work, similarly to how you can't use your phone around Gaster and his followers, except it will play this creepy sound. It's the same sound that plays during entry 17. If you talk to Sean the shopkeeper about Jevel, he'll say this. He was a funny little man. Once the court jester, I the court magician. A friend? I could hardly consider him a friend. Perhaps not. But he was the only one who matched me in the games we used to play. One day he met a strange someone, and since then he began to change. He started saying things that didn't completely make sense, but didn't completely not make sense either. Soon he began to see the world as a game, and everyone as its participants. As the court mage and his only companion, I was forced to lock him away. Or rather, lock us all away in his own words. Since that time, the strange words he's said have stuck inside my cotton, and my view of this world has gotten darker yet darker.
He said it!
He directly quotes entry 17, implying Gaster made Jevil insane. In both chapter 1 and 2, you can encounter the man behind the tree. He will give you an egg. An egg in Wingdings is up, up, right, the move a knight makes in chess. After you receive the egg, the man will disappear, similarly to how Gaster disappears when you interact with him. When you beat the game, you finally see the true form of the old classroom. The clock's hour and minute hand are both pointing towards 6, meaning the clock is pointing towards 6-6. When you go down this path in Hometown, you will find the bunker. You can't enter it, but it will make this sound. If you speed it up by 666%, you will get the muse_smile sound file. But what's more interesting is this room's room number. It's room 17. In Deltarune Chapter 2, as Chris and Susie walk to the library, you'll encounter a traffic jam. If you collected the egg in Chapter 1 and interact with this car, the following will occur. Looks like a car. There's even a man inside this one. He waves at you happily. After interacting with the man, if you interact with the car again, it will just say, looks like a car. It won't mention the man again, almost as if he disappeared. The narration refers to this man in the same way it refers to the man behind the tree, implying the man behind the tree is the man in the car and is a Lightner. Okay, so that was very long, but now let's get into the actual theory. So to determine if Gaster is a knight, we must analyze what he's been up to since he fell into his creation, and most importantly, if this Gaster is this Gaster. Gaster is referred to as him several times in Undertale, and the song that plays during the character select is called Another Hymn, implying this Gaster is different from the Undertale Gaster. So I could easily conclude that there are two Gasters, but things are much more complicated. The secret image on Deltarune's website that details Ralsei's prophecy is titled hymn.png, not another hymn.png, implying this is the Undertale Gaster speaking. But if there is a separate Gaster living in the world of Deltarune, why is Undertale Gaster telling us information pertinent to Deltarune's plot? Is this an oversight by Toby? Am I looking too far into this? No. Recall Gaster was shattered across time and space. Could him and another him be two shattered pieces of Gaster? The way I like to think of it is it's sort of similar to the Horcruxes in Harry Potter. For those of you who don't know, in Harry Potter, a Horcrux is an item that you can use to hide pieces of your soul in. In the second book, we meet Tom Riddle, who is the physical manifestation of the soul fragment stuck in a Horcrux. He has the same personality of the Horcrux creator at the time the Horcrux was created. I suspect Gaster's situation is similar. When he was shattered across time and space, his soul, the very culmination of his being, was shattered across time and space too. I believe one of these fragments of Gaster is in the Deltarune universe. The fragment, similar to a Horcrux, can take on Gaster's appearance and his personality at the time he was shattered. But how does this Gaster know about the prophecy? Since this fragment of Gaster is in Deltarune's universe, it follows that he could have learned about the prophecy. I believe, along with there being shattered pieces of Undertale Gaster's soul, there's also a Deltarune equivalent of Gaster, just as there's a Deltarune equivalent for every other Undertale character. It appears this prophecy is related to the religion of Hometown's residents, as they both involve an angel of some kind. So it's quite possible that with enough research, you can learn about this prophecy in the light world. If Gaster's Deltarune equivalent lives in Hometown, then he could have learned about the prophecy through his academic endeavors. It's also possible that the shattered version of Gaster also learned about the prophecy through similar means. Maybe it's contained in a book in the inaccessible part of the library. Now, if my theory up to this point is true, that opens up so many questions. Do all of these different Gasters know about each other? Are their motives aligned with or opposed to each other? Put a pin in that. To see what, if any, motives Gaster has to become the knight, we must analyze his personality. Unfortunately, all we know for sure about him is that he has a sinister disposition, so allow me to speculate wildly. Since Dr. Gaster is, well, a doctor, it follows that he is smart. Mind-blowing revelation. It appears you must be an expert in multiple fields of science and engineering in order to be qualified for the position of royal scientist. These are disciplines that take years of dedication to master individually, so it's safe to say that Gaster has a passion for these subjects. He created the core, which the game treats as a big achievement. Even Alphys doesn't seem to fully understand how it works, meaning he has a creative and innovative mind. Also, if his followers' description of him is to be believed, it appears he had quite a bit of time to establish himself and invent many things, meaning he's probably not young, most likely middle-aged. Now, if you've seen my last video, you know my opinions on Gaster's family ties, but because I don't want to stack highly speculative theories on top of each other, I'll refrain from talking about that. Just know that I believe Gaster is probably related to Sans and Papyrus. This fact isn't actually relevant to today's theory, I just wanted an excuse to bring up my other video. Consider watching it after this. Now let's look at Gaster's motivation in Undertale. The job of royal scientists is to conduct experiments and invent technology that benefits the underground. We see Gaster do this when he created the core, the source of electricity for the underground. One of the biggest problems for the underground is the fact that they need human souls to free themselves from their underground prison. So as royal scientist, he would have an interest in obtaining human souls for the good of his people. If a fragment of Gaster's soul got stuck in the Deltarune universe, that's bad news for the red soul we control. Okay, so let's gather all we know about Gaster so far. He's sinister, a former royal scientist, likes science and engineering, probably related to sands and papyrus, and wants a human soul. Using this information, let's speculate about Deltarune Gaster. Firstly, the characters of Deltarune are similar to their Undertale counterparts. Their personalities are the same, but the circumstances of their lives are different. However, they tend to gravitate towards jobs that were similar to the ones they had in Undertale. Instead of being a king, Asgore was the police chief. He also liked to garden in Undertale, and in Deltarune, he owns a flower shop. Instead of being the head of the royal guard, Undyne is a police officer and later a police chief. In Undertale, Toriel always wanted to be a teacher, and in Deltarune, Toriel is a teacher. Instead of being a scientist, Alphys is a teacher in Deltarune. Gaster may have been attracted to being a teacher in the same way Alphys was, or may have settled with being a teacher because teaching and doing science are both academic pursuits. Although, I don't think he felt fulfilled being a teacher alone, and so he took up science as a pastime. In Deltarune Chapter 1, there's no evidence he still works there, which means he either lost his job or quit. After his career as a teacher ended, he took up science full-time and lived as a hermit in the bunker. Now, what science could Gaster be doing that's occupying his time so much? I think you know what. The first dark fountain was opened in the school, and according to my theory, Gaster used to work for the school and thus would have known the layout. He opened the dark fountain similar to how his Undertale version may have been experimenting on a dark fountain. He probably chose to open a dark fountain in the old classroom because he knew it was vacant most of the time and wouldn't be discovered. I believe he did this for purely scientific reasons. Or if he's Gaster from Undertale, he's trying to cause the roaring in order to force the human from the prophecy to appear so he can steal their soul. Pick the motive you find most compelling. The last thing I want to mention is the sound that plays when you enter the dark world. In the files, this sound is called sound_him_quick. This is another piece of evidence connecting Gaster to the dark world. Now I will explain why Gaster is also the man behind the tree. As stated earlier, if you've collected the egg in the light world, you'll meet a mysterious man described similar to the man behind the tree. It's likely that they're the same person, meaning the man behind the tree is a lightener. Now, if this man is not the knight, it's highly coincidental that he happens to be in the area to enter the dark fountain when the real knight opens these dark fountains. It makes far more sense that the man behind the tree opens these dark fountains himself and enters soon after. In the computer lab, the narration specifically points out that the closet is large enough for a person to hide inside, almost like someone was lying in wait for Noelle and Birdley to show up, open the dark fountain, and immediately entered the dark world. If my theory about Gaster being the knight is true, then it follows that he's also the man behind the tree. Another reason I believe the knight and the man behind the tree are the same person is because the door to both the old classroom and the computer lab are closed when dark fountains are contained within them. You can see that when Chris and Susie enter these rooms, they are almost immediately transported to the dark world, meaning they don't have time to close the door behind them. Therefore, if the man behind the tree isn't the knight, when he enters the dark world, the door to the room should be open, but it isn't. It makes more sense that the man behind the tree enters the room, closes the door behind them, opens the dark fountain, and enters the dark world. If my theory about Gaster being the knight is true, then it follows that he is also the man behind the tree. Now that I've established that Gaster is the knight and the man behind the tree, I must also determine if he's the one who made Jevil insane. You may be saying, according to Sham, the knight made Jevil insane, and since Gaster is the knight, Gaster made Jevil insane. But things aren't that simple. Sham doesn't specifically say the knight made Jevil insane, just that a strange someone did. I believe Gaster knows information so earth-shattering that it could drive anyone insane. Most importantly, he's the only person who knows this. Gaster is clearly the person who hijacked the official Undertale Twitter, and he's definitely the narrator of the character select. Therefore, one of two things is happening in the Deltarune/Undertale universe. Either it is a game, or it exists in a multiverse in which the real world is one of the many universes. Either way, in order for Gaster to do everything he's done, he'd need to know that one of these two things are true. Therefore, he either told Jevil that he's a character in a game and his choices don't matter, or more interestingly, he told Jevil about other worlds where he doesn't exist. Think back to Goner Kid from Undertale. Have you ever thought of a world where everything is the same, except you don't exist? Everything functions perfectly without you. Haha. The thought terrifies me. Goner Kid is different from the other Gaster followers in that they may not even be one. Their dialogue doesn't mention Gaster at all, and the fun value needed to meet them is very far away from the other Gaster followers. And listen to what they say. Have you ever thought of a world where you don't exist? As if someone told them that, and it terrified them so much that they turned into a goner. Their whole world seems to have been rocked by that thought. When Gaster was shattered across time and space, he became an incorporeal being who was always watching. You can see that parts of his physical form can be interacted with. Maybe somewhere he told Goner Kid about their predicament, which troubled them greatly. And then there's Clam Girl. She seems to know about the Deltarune universe and even mentions someone named Susie. We see her turn into a goner before our very eyes. Could something similar have happened to Goner Kid? She has a monochrome color palette similar to the other Gaster followers and Monster Kid, and was probably told some earth-shattering information by Gaster. But unlike Goner Kid, she is not troubled by this information. She feels enlightened similar to how Jevil feels enlightened after meeting a strange someone. If all this is true, then Gaster has a history of telling people earth-shattering information that causes them to go insane. This would also suggest that a shattered piece of Gaster is making Jevil insane. If Gaster made Jevil insane, it follows that he also made Spamton insane. I mean, it'd be a weird storytelling decision if Jevil and Spamton were corrupted by two different characters. I believe Gaster caused Spamton's insanity in a similar way to Jevil. However, that doesn't mean he's the Mike Spamton's always talking about. It's possible that after Mike stopped talking to him, Gaster seized the opportunity to corrupt the mentally fragile Spamton. Gaster is associated with the devil. His stats in the files of Undertale are all 666s, a number associated with the devil. This means he's the exact opposite of the angel from the Deltarune prophecy. While the angel wants to bring on the angel's heaven, Gaster wants to bring on the roaring. Now the biggest question you're probably asking after hearing this whole theory is, why is Gaster doing this? And I think I have an answer. Undertale Gaster is likely trying to get the red soul we control. Deltarune Gaster is trying to cause the roaring. As a highly accomplished scientist, he's probably gotten to the point in his life where there isn't anything interesting left to study. And since he's in some sort of half-alive, half-dead state, he has nothing left to live for. So why not see what the end of the world looks like? Over the course of his scientific studies, he learned how to make dark fountains and about the roaring. He creates the first dark fountain and enters it. He meets Rouse, who tells him about the prophecy, thinking he's the monster the prophecy speaks of. He now knows that there will come a day when someone will stop his plan of causing the roaring. So whenever he makes new dark fountains, he'll be sure to turn all of its residents against Lightners. When he creates the Card Kingdom Dark Fountain, he overthrows the government and puts the Spade King into power because he's the only ruler who seems to resent the Darkners. He befriends Jevil and tells him about the true nature of reality, which drives him insane. When Chris, Susie, and Rouse foil his plans, he decides on a different approach. Before going into the library, he makes sure to taunt his opponents before teleporting into the computer lab closet. When he creates a Cyber City Dark Fountain, he tells Noelle and Birdley about it. He tells Queen about how to make dark fountains so that she will target either Noelle or Birdley and force them to make more dark fountains. He drives Spamton insane and tells them that if he takes Chris's soul, he'll finally be free. He does this so Spamton will kill Chris and stop the prophecy. Unfortunately for him, his plan again is foiled by a group of teenagers.
Firmly grasp it in your hand. Firmly grasp it.
And if my theory on there being shattered pieces of Undertale Gaster in the Deltarune universe is true, he could be receiving help from them to enact this plan. The biggest problem with this theory is that his plan is very convoluted for no reason. If he wants to create enough dark worlds to cause the roaring, why doesn't he spam the create dark world button until he causes the roaring? The reason I think he does this is because he may not have enough determination to create the number of dark fountains needed to cause the roaring, which is why he took Noelle and Burley with him in the second dark world, hoping they were more determined than him. That's the end of this theory. I just want to remind you that this is just a crockpot theory and will probably be disproved in chapter 3, but I had a lot of fun making it and look forward to making more knight theories. But what do you guys think? Do you think Gaster is a knight? Do you think that the premise of my theory is correct but the details are wrong? Or do you think a completely different character is the knight? Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe.
Now! Curse the trolls! Peace to everybody else.